Good afternoon, everybody. 1 o'clock on a beautiful Wednesday. Happy hump day to all of my hump day enthusiasts out there. You are with me, Sean, live from Milan, calling all of you at home. Whenever you come in, say hello. Welcome to all. Have yourself a nice cup of Joe. And this little webinar that we have for you today is going to be a challenge for you and your opinion. That's what I'm going to be looking for today, guys. I would like your opinion, your thoughts, and your ideas, because today we're going to be talking about a very big question. But before we get started, guys, as you come in, please say hello so I know who you are. Don't worry, I'm not the FBI or the government. I'm not looking for your identification or anything, but I would just like to know who is participating with me today so that we can keep a nice dialogue going over this next hour, okay? So please come in, say hi. If you guys don't know me already, I am Sean. I come from a very small town in New York. Probably nobody even knows of it, but it's very close to Niagara Falls. Okay, I know we can't travel right now, but since it's a beautiful day outside, it makes me think of back home, guys. So if you feel a little reminiscent, okay, drop your comments down in the chat, participate with me. Today, we are going to be talking about something very, very big, something very, very big, and that is about language, okay? As we get started today, I want to first talk about language and how important it is for you, it is to learn a language, okay? What do you think? Is language an important skill to have? Is it useful in your professional career? Is it useful in your educational career? Um, I want to start with a little bit of a background to get our ideas out on the table so that we can talk about kind of building the future. Okay. Oh, Clara, welcome back, girl. All right. So today we're going to take the mission to try to sculpt the tomorrow. Okay. And we're going to focus on language. Okay. So in your opinion, how important is language in the world around us and in your professional life? Okay. Not only that, when we talk about language, I mean, I'm a language teacher, so obviously I have a bias. Okay. And if you guys understand what bias is, it means you are already on one side. So you kind of already have an opinion. Okay, but your opinion is by default because, for example, if I am a teacher, of course I have a bias for language being an important thing to learn. Okay. So what do you guys think? Um, do you guys think it's important to learn a language? When is it an important time to start learning a language or even being exposed to a language? Um, for you guys, when were you exposed to learning English or any other kind of foreign language? And I think one important factor in all of this is what was your teacher's perspective on teaching a foreign language? I think that's the most important question that I want to start off with, because in America, what's interesting is usually in public schools, we are not introduced to a foreign language until around 13 or 14 years old. And it's a very limited choice that we have. We either have French or Italian, or excuse me, French or Spanish. Um, my father, if we go back 40 years, he told me that the choices when he was in high school were German, Italian, French, Spanish. So it seemed like earlier, there was there were more options and it filtered down into basically two categories, Spanish or English. Okay. And excellent. So we have a language lover here with us, Clara. I like it. Okay. She studied Japanese in the past. Okay. Konnichiwa. I don't know what that means. Um, But I think that all of us agree, especially being students or other educators or even professionals, we see the power of language, okay? And that's what we want to talk about today, is the power of language. And I think too that going into the future, going into from today into 2021 and beyond, um, I think I think culturally we need to put a bigger focus on learning languages, okay? And and Clara, look, oh sweet, it does mean hi. Excellent. Okay. And then I have, so it's konnichiwa, ohayo-san, or something like that, which I think is like how are you? Okay, so this is going to be a Japanese American class. Fantastic. Okay. Um, and so that's what's really interesting. And you're bringing up some really good points, Clara, where body language is everything. So it's not just, for example, even though I'm projecting to you through a digital means of conversation, at least you can see my gesture. You can see my movement of my hands. You can see my posture. Okay, you can see our eye contact. I'm looking at you guys right now. Okay. And these things help us to transfer information. Okay, you transfer a feeling. And what I was saying before about languages and this new decade, I think especially for young professionals like us, it's really important to promote language learning, especially for the younger generations. Okay, because of the younger generations, for anybody who's about 25 and up, okay, we all come from that mix between semi-analogic, semi-digital world. What I mean is, we still had CDs growing up. We maybe had some tapes, some VHS, okay? Where after that point, everyone was born into iPhone or born into a tablet, this kind of mentality of digital. So they have all of this exposure, and they have all of these tools, but at the end of the day, do we use these tools in a correct way? Do we use these tools in a way to enlighten us and give us more information and improve our intelligence? Because all of these things we can use as a way to educate us. And we have to figure out, we have to find the best way to utilize these tools, okay? So today we're going to look and we're going to form opinions, we're going to build dialogue, and we're going to ask each other questions so that we can have a very nice kind of, we call it a round the table conversation on all right. Sorry about that. I completely just exited out of whatever I was doing. But what we were talking about before, excellent. Okay. So now that I have this up, okay. Very good, Clara. So yeah, if I have a son or a daughter in the future, I will let them attend an international school to learn at least English from the beginning. Okay, very good. And you also mentioned that you are a little sad that you've learned English by attending English classes taught by Italian speakers. Exactly. And I think, for example, I think you and I will agree on this, and maybe you others will agree that the most important thing is going to always be some kind of immersive experience, okay? The most beautiful way to learn any language is immersion, complete immersion. And and we try to do it, either we have nannies or we hire people to kind of, live with our children. But I think the most beautiful experience, and maybe you guys agree with me, is if I ever have a family, I will make sure that from a very young age of my children, I will move them to different places, and I will try to get them immersed to feel the culture. Because learning Italian, learning Spanish, learning Japanese, learning a language, it's a small percentage of the grammar and everything. It's a large percentage of the feeling, of the expressions, of the cultural context. That is what helps us to really communicate and really express ourselves. Okay. And there are many ways that we can immerse ourselves, even if we can't necessarily travel to that place. Okay. My biggest challenge that I want to give to all of you is, when you learn English or when you learn any language, is you have to define the love of the language. You have to define what makes you interested about the language. And that is what's going to help you propel and become great at speaking and expressing yourself. Because just like I said before, the iPhone is a tool. Your language skills are a tool. And if you really have the openness and the knack for expressing yourself, you can find any means of doing it. So it's more about resilience. It's more about falling in love. It's finding new curiosities. And I think language can teach us how to stay students, stay humble, and also stay hungry to grow. That's the most important part. So when we're learning our languages, guys, you have to do research. And it's not research to be really good at grammar. It's do research at getting really, really excited about expressing yourself and finding expressions and finding phrases to help you feel more confident in your language. Okay. Thank you very much, Anna. That's the most exciting part, is whenever we feel like we can connect, because language is a key to making connection. Okay. And that's what we have to do in life, is no matter what you do, no matter if you are a garbage man, no matter if you are the king of Spain, what is life if you don't make connections? So today our challenge is going to be forming our opinions, and our topic is going to be global language, okay? So global language, because today we can talk about how English, the business language, Mandarin Chinese, because we have a very large population, is also a very powerful business language. We call that French, Spanish, and Italian are our Romance languages because they come from Latin. Um, and that's the thing, we have languages in different titles. But do you think that in our lifetime, we will be able to have one language that everyone speaks? Okay. I think there was something called like Espardo or something that was a blend of all these languages together. But today, if you guys remember what that language is called, please tell me. I think it's like Espardu, Espardont, Esparwont. I don't know. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, so today what we're going to talk about, we're going to be having a friendly debate. We're going to have phrases for presenting your position, asking for an opinion, and phrases for agreeing and disagreeing. Okay? So let's start off the discussion. The discussion topic on the board today is going to be, do you think the world needs a global language? And could translation be used instead? Okay, so what do we think is the real new means of communication? Second question, which language should be used as a global language and why? And the last language, what do you think is causing such a huge demand for English? So take a moment. And thank you, Anna. It is Esperanto. So I was close. Okay. So what do you guys think? What would be, what do you think is going to be the stronghold, the challenge for our future? Is it going to be defining a one world language, or is it going to be kind of funding and powering the power of translation? Okay. Clara comes up and she says, a global language would be useful. Translation is not always possible. There are some concepts that cannot be translated or are difficult to express in another language. Exactly. So that's what's interesting is maybe because we know that language is tied together with culture, maybe we're moving more towards a consciousness of a one world cultural identity. Okay. And why? So you think English is the right choice because it's spoken as a native language in many parts of the world. And yeah, so it's native language or it's a state declared language. So therefore it really kind of is very widespread. Okay? Very good point. I think it. So looking here, um, we can agree with each other, we can disagree. Okay, what are your views? I think in a lot of ways translation is helpful for traveling, but I think for communicating, especially, for example, the EU, how does the EU function? No, come on, Claire, let's fight for Italy. All right, I think Italian should be the world standard of spoken, the world language. I think that's a great idea. Um, but if we talk about any language, do you think that we have the mental capacity to maybe invent a new language? Can we transform? I remember when Esperanto was something very, very big and kind of in style, and it kind of lost fervor quite quickly. But talking a little bit more about the language, okay, translation and language. What do we think we should focus on for the next 5 years? Should we really try to emphasize building a new type of structural of a global language, or do you think we just need to improve how we translate? Oh, Lucia, excellent. So Lucia says that I don't think we need a global language. It would be a simplification of any other language, and it wouldn't be useful. We need the hard part of any language is to express ourselves as best as we can, which I agree completely. But at the same time, if we look at the fact that the complexity of a language exists, um, I don't know. I would like to challenge the fact that maybe we can create a new complexity, a new platform to express ourselves. I think that could be possible, where we utilize pieces of culture to kind of develop and build a uniform community. Okay, a global community in a way. Okay, and so if we choose, for example, any language, that's fine. But what do you guys think? Why do you guys think that English is such is so demanding? Okay, what makes English so demanding? Clara already explained that it was because many people already speak it. But what do you guys think? When you think of songs, I think of some traditional Italian songs, some songs from the 60s and 70s, some popular Italian songs. I think of some, I mean, even for example, I don't think anyone really knows Japanese rock and roll. Okay? But if we think about music, there's this one artist that you guys might be interested in. His name is the tallest man on earth, and he he's from Norway or Sweden, and he sings all of his songs in English because he feels that the poetry he can express his ideas a lot better in this language than his native language, and that's what's really interesting is we have to remember that the language is the tool that we can use, and we want to utilize as best as possible what it is we want to express. So some languages maybe aren't good for rhyming, where other languages might have a nice rhythmic sound to them. Okay, so it's finding the pros and the cons to the language and the sound and the context. It's like making a very it's like delicious cake. Come on, guys. Okay. So let's now put the phrases of the words that you think are most important. Okay. So these, for example, especially here, as far as I'm concerned, or personally I think, are ways for you guys to express your ideas a little bit clearer. Okay. When I want to ask your opinion, I will always say, what are your thoughts about? How do you feel about? And right now, can you guys maybe give some other examples of asking for an opinion or presenting your opinion? Maybe some key phrases that you like to use. That would be awesome if you could share with me. Okay, so whenever we want to build conversation, we always want to utilize these kinds of ways to introduce a topic or pull from somebody else. Okay, so give yourself a moment and think about it, and come up with any other phrases that you like to use. A lot of times, for example, whenever I come up with presenting my opinion, I like to always kind of do the double meaning. I may be wrong, but okay, or what I can see, okay, yeah, exactly, okay, very good. So from my point of view or my perspective, excellent, okay. What else? So that's presenting your opinion. Do you guys have any phrases for asking for an opinion? Okay, here, oftentimes I use a penny for your thoughts. Okay, this is a different way to say, what's your opinion? What do you think? A penny for your thoughts? All right, I'll actually pay you guys for your ideas. And if I had a penny for every time I said that. Mhm. And now, Clara, instead of using clues, because a clue is kind of like um, a suggestion in a way. We might say, I don't have any other ideas. Okay, but very nice. Great sentence. So we have our debate language for asking for opinion and presenting an opinion. Now let's think about phrases for agreeing and disagreeing. So before I put them up on the board, what are some of your phrases that you know of agree or disagree? And think about total agreement, total disagreement, semi agreement, semi disagreement. So think about different phrases and different categories of how much you agree with somebody. Okay, so for example, oftentimes if I agree with you, I say I couldn't agree more. Okay, very good. So I think your idea is correct. I agree with you. Okay, I think that's not as you think. So here maybe I don't think exactly how you do. I don't think exactly how you do. Okay. The best one that I like to use is agree to disagree. Okay. Couldn't agree with you more. Could not agree with you any less. You can also do the opposite. Okay. Um, maybe, for example, we can think about using. Mhm. And these as well, guys. So we can say, I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree more. I completely agree. I'm sorry, I can't agree with that. Okay. I'm afraid that isn't right. And I'm not too sure about that. Okay. And we can even ask a question to you. Are you sure? You positive? I don't know. Okay. So these are some great ways that we can use in whenever we're talking in a heated debate or a heated discussion. Okay. So now let's switch over to this part. Okay. So we talked that English, for example, already we had Anna bring up that it is pretty much a language for finance in the professional realm. Okay, here we see. So we noticed that it is already, we see that English is already this formation of a global language. But what I want us to talk about now, and what I like to play often, is the devil's advocate, okay? The double-edged sword, okay? The person that kind of plays both aspects of the argument. So looking here, we have to choose a side. The first thing that we need to think about is if having a global language is a threat to the individual cultures, okay? If English is the global language, which standard should we use? Should we use British or American or Australian? And do you agree or disagree? Okay, so what I want you guys to do now is take a couple moments and kind of formulate your opinion, answering these three questions. Okay, so this is a great point that you bring up, Clara, that we should be able to learn a global language and maintain our own culture. But what would be the best way then? What can you suggest as ways to help us maintain our individual culture, our identity, our nationalistic pride? Okay, very good. So you're Sicilian and I moved, okay? I moved to the north 6 years ago, even though because that looks like tough. Even though I'm immersed in a new context, I always maintain my culture. Okay. So, here, for example, your culture, your traditions, okay. But this kind of plays into a really interesting perspective because what I notice in the world, if you live anywhere, what begins to happen is if you move, there's always a perspective south, east, and west, and it's kind of an identity. And Italy is a very complex dynamic, let's say, okay? Uh, because what's really interesting is the concept of space, okay? What I want to say, what I would like to say is that the concept of space kind of creates this this dynamic of distance, right? So coming from America, if I came from my small town in New York and I moved to New York City, probably there would never be any type of discussion of where I came from or anything like that. At the same point, if I go down south, and to be honest with you, I've never really experienced this, but what's interesting between Italy and America is, for example, my brother moved from one side of America to the other side of America, and there's differences, but the differences aren't that highlighted. Okay, and what's interesting is living in Italy, it seems like the differences are heightened, even though the distance is great. Okay, Sicilians have a completely different tradition than Sardinians, and Sardinians than people from Genova and people from maybe Ancona. And that's what's amazing about such a small country having such a diverse vastness. Okay, because if I look at Italy, I can say that all of Italy has a similar culture, but maybe the traditions are what changed. Okay. And maybe you agree with me and maybe you don't. Okay. I would like to get your opinion. Aneth says, I think up to a point that a global language could be a threat to individual culture. If we keep speaking both languages, our native and the global one, there won't be a problem. Of course, there won't be a problem. Okay. Um, but if we get a little bit more specific into the situation of kind of declaring this is our language, okay? Because what's interesting, one thing is always going to seem one is always going to seem a little bit more important than the other. Think of Switzerland, for example. In Switzerland, it seems like they have a vast amount of different languages, whether it be German, French, Italian, and it's the mixing of these two. Of course, a national language, but in the end, they have they different pockets and different regions of different spoken languages. And I think that's kind of a standard to look at and study to see how we can integrate that idea into other aspects and other varieties of developing a global language. Okay. I apologize if my connection is a little bad. Seems like we're going through a tunnel. Okay. So what more can you say about this? If English becomes the standard, how do you think we should integrate it? I mean, we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but it seemed like uh, we have one very particular aspect of learning a language, and that is mother tongue instructors don't necessarily teach foreign people. So, if we talk about public schools in Italy, if we talk about, for example, Clara's case, she said that when she was learning English, she was taught by an Italian. Okay. Do you think there are positives to this? Do you think there are negatives to this? I'll tell you that, for example, I studied Spanish for about 4 years. I don't speak anything of Spanish. And I think that the downfall, the major negative aspect was the fact that I never learned Spanish from an actual Spanish person. I learned all from American people who maybe lived in Spain more or less, not more than a year, I would say. So there are limitations on the cultural context of the language really kind of hindered the application of me retaining the meaning and the culture and the importance. Whereas whenever I learned Italian the first time in university, I was studying under an Italian woman who had moved from Italy to America. Now, even her, she's like the second generation, right? Because now we have a woman who grew up in Italy and then started her career in America. So now there's time that happens. And what we notice with language is time changes how we express ourselves. And also too, we lose because language is always growing. Okay, language is always changing, language is always evolving. When I go home in America, I may lose and I may not understand certain expressions that they use because I'm not connected to the American culture. Okay. Whereas, for example, Clara brings in a good point. I think that mother tongue people have to be introduced into public schools and offices. I agree completely. Okay. Moving on to Anna, but I think about Milan, I can see that native language, the Milanese dialect, is spoken by nobody because there is a lot of Italian immigrants that don't know that language. Okay. So what's interesting too is you guys have this perspective on, even in Italy, you have immigrants, okay? Because in America, if you're an American, you go down to Florida from New York, you're still American. Yeah, you're a New Yorker or you're from Florida. But it's interesting that you guys have this very distant perspective on each other. When I come from a country that is very big, but our distance is less. Okay. Um, and back to Clara, it's something that should be introduced in each company. I think that every company should teach and train its employees with mother tongue speakers. I think that if we start in the professional world of mother tongue language learners, I think that's the thing. There should be an exchange of language. Okay, there should be an exchange of people who are professionally trained to teach and also, for example, share. Because at a certain point with your language, for everybody, it gets to a point where it's a game of catch. You throw, you receive, you give, you take. And you have to build that dialogue and that dynamic. Okay, that's an important dynamic to create in your professional life. But I agree completely that we need to definitely we need to definitely make a foundation for all of these, for people to have access to language. Okay, especially if we all want to communicate on the same page. Now, looking at this point, I think we should take a look at kind of coming around to making some points. Okay, what do you guys think would be the best angle, would be the best way to approach this topic? Okay, we've been talking about mother tongue speakers, we've been talking about education, we've been talking about the community, but really, in this time specifically, we have an opportunity. And I want to ask you guys the question, what can we do from now on to improve this this international community, this international language that we can communicate? Okay, so this could threaten the Milanese culture and dialect too. Um, but but the thing is I think dialects, I think languages, uh, I think we need to kind of take a step back first. And I think we need to analyze where we have come from. When we talk about dialects, oftentimes we make it sound like it's an endangered species. And I think that in a lot of cases, these things don't really die. Yeah, sure. So my question for you is from now on, what should be the focus? How can, because right now we are in a situation of we're stopped. What do we think we can do to improve education and improve this kind of global language for tomorrow? How can we make it so that we are being respectful to our cultures and we are also growing into a global community? Because that's the big question today, is we are a global community, and what must we do to protect, support, and develop a global community? Okay. I know, right? If only people were just more open-minded, Clara, the whole world would be a better place. Okay. This is a great response. So, firstly, people should be more open-minded. I mean that not all people are open to learn, approach new language or culture. Because we have to think about, it's the training, it's the development. Okay, so I think we're at a point in time in our history where maybe, just maybe, we can make an international global standard of education, that each person has the right to study, to learn, and to do scholarly activities. I think that's the most important part, is create a base for everybody. Okay? What else? What are some other ideas? So we build a global community through a foundation of learning. Okay? Then what happens? What are some other important points? So as you guys are building ideas, try to think about if it's valid, if it's an effective means of developing this concept of globally connectivity and how we can form together as a community. Okay. I think open-mindedness is always going to be a very important part, but also we need a very strong structure of education. We need to focus on making all people equally mm, fundamentally strong and connected. I think that's what helps us the most. Because if we don't have a common ground, we can't grow together. Okay. And that could be very interesting. Yeah. So talking about something that that touches everybody. So one topic, and in one way, this virus, this horrible thing that has affected all of us might just be the common ground to connect all of us, to make us all feel human again, to make us all feel like maybe I should think about you and I affect you and you affect me. And that relation of having the ownership of your decisions and of how you play in relationship to somebody else. That's the biggest thing, guys, is we have to work together in one way or another. Okay? So it's a pleasure talking with you this afternoon. I hope you continue to join us and continue to follow us in the next coming days. We're always with you. We're always waiting to hear you guys and your expressions and have a great conversation with all of you. So I hope you guys all have a great day, and I hope to see you all soon, okay? Bye.